Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to the ISTE Librarians Network webinar this evening. I'm Nancy Jo Lambert, and I'm on the ISTE Librarians Network leadership team, and I will be your host for tonight's webinar. Thanks so much for joining our fifth installment of the From Advocacy to Activism webinar with every library. The ISTE Librarians Network is proud to be co-hosting these free webinars with every library, the first National Political Action Committee for libraries. The ISTE Librarians Network has a mission to promote librarians as professional learning, as leaders and champions of educational technology and digital literacy. Whew, that was a mouthful. Our key mission is to provide a professional learning community where librarians can leverage technology, knowledge, and expertise to improve school library programs, increase access to information. Oh no, my lights went off. And foster teaching and learning environments in a connected world. Tonight's webinar, using social media and email to maximize your visibility, will highlight ways that you can do more than just share information and content about your programs. John Kraska, like Alaska?
You got it.
Okay. Our presenter, yay, John, will teach you some valuable lessons about building support for your programs, too. I had the pleasure of meeting John in real life this summer at ISTE in Chicago at the ISTE Librarians Network social, so that was really fun. I'm going to tell you a little bit about John now. He is the executive director of Every Library, the first nationwide political action committee for libraries. And since 2013, Every Library has helped 83 library communities with ballot measures for funding, operations, and buildings, winning 80% of the time and securing over $265 million in funding on election days. Yay, that's awesome. Every Library also runs SaveSchoolLibraries.org, a digital advocacy site focused on preserving budgets and positions for school libraries. A longtime library trustee, supporter, and advocate, Mr. Kraska is a former president of the Board of Trustees for the Berwyn, Illinois Public Library, and is a former president of the Reaching Across Illinois Library Systems, RAILS, or Multi-Type Library System. He was named a 2014 Mover and Shaker by Library Journal for his work with Every Library. He tweets at Mr. Kraska. And we want to give a very special hi to John, who's here with us tonight to do this. And then we also want to give a very special thanks to Fallout Learning for sponsoring tonight's webinar and the whole From Advocacy to Activism series this year. Fallout is the major sponsor for Every Library SaveSchoolLibrarians.org advocacy initiative as well. Please join us in thanking them when you tweet at Fallout Learning, and you can view any of these webinars for free on the ISTE Librarians Network site anytime. So we will be taking questions and comments via social media tonight. So if you have anything you want to ask or say, please tweet using the hashtag ISTELib, and we will do our best to answer. That would be John and I. John promises to try and pay attention to the ISTELib tag this week for question and comments later on. So if you're viewing this at a later time, totally fine. We will, John or I or someone from the ISTE Librarian team will also try and get back to you. All right, we are super excited to kick this off, and we want to thank you guys for joining us in the ISTELib community tonight. And so now I'm going to turn it over to you, John.
Nancy Jo, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You may want to mute your microphone in the meantime. I'm going to hit share screen on here and then make sure that you all can see what I've got going on. All right, Nancy Jo, can we see it? I should have asked you that before I told you to mute your microphone.
I can see it. You might want to move the little stop sharing. There you go.
Okay.
Hide that.
Well, let's hide that. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Oh. Great. Hey, team. Thanks for taking the time to be with me tonight and for us to be able to do this ISTE Librarians Network webinar again. We're going to be talking about social media and email, perhaps in a different way than what you've normally been talking about, which is trying to attract more attention and maybe more use of your school library and your school library programs. We're going to be talking about from the perspective of advocacy and the perspective of how to build support for your program and your position. Whether you're a solo librarian at one school or if you're an anchor for a larger school district where there's, you got to go to a bunch of buildings, Or if you're in a leadership position and you're a coordinator for school library programs, I'd like you to keep your own situation in mind as we talk about this. Again, I'm not looking to build more use or find out ways to have fun with social media with your students. I want to get down into the nitty-gritty of why people care about your programs and what they would like to hear from you about through social media and in particular through email. Briefly, and I appreciate Nancy Jo for the introduction, every library is a political action committee for libraries. We are focused on library funding, whether it's public libraries on the ballot, and we've got 10 of them coming up this November 6th, 2018, or the funding future for school library programs via our SaveSchoolLibrarians.org site. All of our work for library communities is pro bono, which means we do it for free. We have donor support from around the country from individuals as well as from corporate sponsors, largely within the library community. We're able to do this work on the ground for free to help libraries either on the public side with their elections or the negotiations, or on the school library community side with the challenges that sometimes come when budget cuts are unfairly pointed towards the program and your position. Again, thank you to ISTE. It's been a great partnership so far, the ISTE Librarians Network. We've enjoyed the chance to be able to get to know them this year, and we're looking forward to doing some additional good work together. I also want to thank Follett at the beginning and at the end, because without Follett's leadership here, we would not have this SaveSchoolLibrarians.org site, nor would we be able to have talked about the couple of dozen jobs that we've helped secure in a couple of dozen programs around the country in 2017, 2018. If you need help because you're under attack and under threat, if you know somebody who's a school librarian, a media specialist, whatever your job title is in your particular state, but if they're gunning after your position and especially the place that you do your work, please give us a call. And thanks to Follett for helping us do that in this conversation tonight. All right. We are Political Action Committee for Libraries. What does that mean? That means we learn a lot and we do a lot in the political space. What we're talking about here tonight around social and around email is not focusing on the way that, brand building. We're not focusing on a sales cycle. We're focusing on politics as our model, because politics talks not about use, but about, what do you value? Not about uptake, but what do you believe in? What do you hope for? What's your vision for the community? And how do you find somebody who's going to carry that vision forward on election day for you? We're going to be talking about the political side of it, and then getting very practical in the second half on how to put those political visions, those value visions, those mission and vision that you have for the job that you do and the kids you serve every day in a community school setting. We'll get to the practical stuff in the end, but I want to give you a little bit of theory behind why we're approaching it from that political space. Again, it's not a sales cycle. Sales cycles, all these seminars about how libraries and library programs should be more like Amazon or Disney or any of those kinds of, no. Somebody comes in, they buy something. Somebody looks online, they buy something. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about, instead of uptake and use, and again, I'm not really looking to have a conversation about how your kids can have more fun or your kids can have experiential learning here. I want to talk to adults. I want to talk to taxpayers. I want to talk to decision makers. And that certainly is not a sales cycle. If it was a situation where the elevator speech actually worked, we would be doing elevator speeches all the time. An elevator speech is essentially transactional. You walk into an elevator, you see somebody that you should talk to, you give them the elevator speech, magic happens, and then they support you. No, what we have instead, I'm not looking to build use today either. And I'm not necessarily worried that anybody who you're talking to, the adults you're talking to, have used a library program at their school. Anybody who's over the age of 25 probably is really out of touch with how school librarianship should really be going. Anybody who's in my demographic, late 40s, anybody's in my demographic, we have a nice point of reference, of course, to somebody who's a school librarian in our lives, but we're a little out of touch also with what should be going on in terms of discovery, individualized learning, group supports, the collection that extends the curriculum, the work that you're doing on making and discovery. We are not going to suddenly come in and start doing that ourselves, someone in his or her mid to late 40s. We are going to look to you to describe to us the impactors that you have in a way that may be about my own kids. Sure, I've got two of them. A little earlier tonight, we were curriculum night at my younger son's school. And yet, what if I don't? What if I'm aged out of having my own kids? What if it's the grandkids? And what if it's not even in this town and my grandkids live someplace else? What if it's not about me having kids at all? What if it's about the idea that there should be somebody making that connection between literature and learning, between curriculum and collection, between making discovery, individualized learning, and who doesn't have the first understanding of what the letters ESSA stand for, the Every Student Succeeds Act. In politics, we don't look at use, we don't look at a sales cycle, we look at engaging people. Yes, partially it's their hearts, certainly it's their minds, a little bit it's their gut check. The ladder of engagement moves somebody not through a cycle of identifying a product that they want to have in their lives, but instead how their life would be better if something was happening, some vision was being realized, some mission was being fulfilled, some value system was being expressed. The ladder of engagement, of course, starts with a large, undifferentiated group of people who are unaware. They're unaware of what school librarianship is in a 21st century learning environment. They're unaware of the services and programs that you're doing, and yet they have a disposition. They have a disposition that says, perhaps I like the idea of a school librarian still. Perhaps I like the idea of a school librarian who's in a context to support other faculty. Perhaps I like the idea that kids can come in and have that space that's before school, after school, independent of testing. There are folks that you can identify through a couple of techniques that we're going to get into in just a moment to move them from being completely unaware of what you're doing to being observers. And that observation could happen through social media, and it can certainly happen within a school community because a lot of your parents are completely unaware, unfortunately. And even the ones who, like myself, are a little rationally ignorant are in need of having observations pushed upon us. We actually welcome it. The observer in the ladder of engagement then, you move from unaware to being an observer because you have been given a chance to observe, not because you wake up on a Tuesday morning and say, it's time for me to start observing the school library. Marketing, in this case, is potentially advertising at its first step. To move somebody from being completely unaware into an observer status is to push something in front of them. But to move somebody from beyond being an observer into being a supporter of library programs in the schools that are properly funded, a supporter of a properly staffed largest classroom in the school. Those supporters are somebody who's been asked to take an action in support of their vision for education, the mission that you're trying to fulfill, and the value system you both share. Eventually, somebody can matriculate into becoming an advocate as well for your program and your position and your funding future. And you have to direct that. We've got other webinars in the series that talk about moving from people from supporters to advocates with several different kinds of techniques. This webinar right now is about the marketing message as opposed to the advertising moment. We tend to stop at the advertising moment, unfortunately. The current messaging model is really an advertising model. It's one way. We put up a read poster, no offense to the read poster series, I love them. We put up the read poster over the water fountain and say, hey, that's marketing. Nope, it's advertising. We put out a newsletter that is a large bulk newsletter on the first day of the month and hope that people remember all the way through the 30th or 31st, God forbid. The advertising techniques that we do also don't provide any feedback to us about not just the success of the technique, but they don't necessarily land on whether or not somebody is a supporter and more than an observer. Yes, you can observe the message about a school library program through advertising on social media and through email, but can you respond to it in a way that says, I support this, I appreciate it, I'd like to be involved in it, whether my kid is in that school or not. I'd like to see it properly funded. We have this thing with advocacy sometimes with advertising, a lot of the time, where there is this like middle step. We put something up over the drinking fountain. We have that poster. Hey, we got it. The miracle doesn't occur on the elevator with the elevator speech either. The few and far between moments when an elevator speech actually realizes a change in the world. I'd like to know more of those stories. I'd like to be able to share them because I don't know any myself, and we run a political action committee for libraries. The depth of what is behind marketing on Facebook, on social media, and across email is deep. It is more than just putting up a post. Let me give you a brief illustration. If it is family curriculum night at your school, and you put up the post on social media because you're in charge of the social media for your school or for your district, you put up the post that says 7 p.m. family literacy night, bring your kids. 7 p.m. family literacy night, bring your kids. Well, there is something nice and transactional about that, but there's only a certain number of people, and you know your community better than me. There's only a certain number of people who are ever going to show up. And the number of people who are going to show up to that based on 7 p.m. family literacy night, bring your kids, well, we can improve that marketing message by, of course, describing what happens at family literacy night. Family Literacy Night, 7 p.m. on Thursday, where we will work with you and your child in order to make sure that homework isn't a labor and that the love of reading extends through all ages and stages, from your youngest siblings to your grandma and grandpas. Bring the family in order to, okay, that's great. You've just described a lot more about what it is other than a transaction. But what I'm thinking about is not just Thursday night, well, in advance of Thursday night, Wednesday and Tuesday and Monday posts or some email that goes out about it. I'm thinking about Friday and Saturday and Sunday, when there's a lot more humans who live in your community, who may or may not have kids at that school, who likely don't have kids at that school. There's a lot more humans in that community who want to hear about what you just did on Thursday. The ideals behind Family Literacy Night, for example. The accomplishments that happened, that little moment of discovery. Marketing is more than just telling somebody to show up to an event. Marketing is fundamentally telling somebody what happened at the event that they were never going to come to, because it meets the mission that they hope is being realized in the world. It is part of the vision that they have for education, and it is an expression of the value system that is only expressioned by a school librarian. And we need to find out in the marketing that we're doing on social and through email if anybody cares. There's going to be some ways to do that, of course, on social media more easily because some of the built-in tools that they have, like likes and shares. But fundamentally, if somebody cares about what happened on Thursday night, do they want to be a part of the next one? Do they want to be a supporter of it? Do they like the idea? Do they want to be a donor? Do they want to be a volunteer, whether they have kids or not in that school? If the last Thursday's activity was something that motivates them, we have to give them a way to tell us that they've been motivated, touched, energized, activated by it. And that's the key driver also, between the key differentiator, my apologies, between advertising and marketing. So there has to be a step. If it's just the read poster over the drinking fountain and you think that you've accomplished something, yes, a little bit of awareness, perhaps moving somebody from unaware to being an observer, but to move somebody from observer to being a supporter. And there's fewer people in that supporter category. Moving somebody up that way is to find out from them if they care or not by asking them to take an action. There should be a URL on that poster. There should be a respondable thing on that poster. It could be a phone number. It is the way that they tell us that what we're doing matters and that they want to keep in touch about it. Our strategy on social media, our strategy on email is not to simply do awareness building. We're past that. And if that's all we're trying to accomplish, we're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time, or a lot of time and very little money, spinning our wheels without knowing whether or not we've built awareness. It's a step in the process. Likewise, use of the library as a program. Well, if we're looking at ways for kids to have an educational experience on social media or creative experience on social media, a fun experience on social media, if you're looking for kids to be helpers, this isn't the webinar for you. Direct use of the library is not the goal of this marketing conversation, because what is that goal, like I said before, is to find supporters. The strategy around building supporters is that two-way street and not just a one-way ad. I would suggest that we're talking about building support for your program and your position amongst parents as well as other outside supporters. The other part of it here could also be the inside stakeholders, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. Fundamentally, what we want to be able to try and accomplish is to share, well, one of our guiding principles. We've got several guiding principles about how to do social media right, how to do email right, not for advertising, but for marketing, and not for marketing just to build awareness or use, but to find supporters. One of our guiding principles on outreach, on Facebook posts, on tweets, on Instagram posts, on emails that go out from the library or from the school or the district where you're a crafter of it or a contributor to it, is to not just talk about Thursday, 7 p.m., family literacy night, not just to talk about the what of your program. Yes, you have to describe what you're doing. And yes, there's always this pithy, slide in these kinds of presentations about what's starting with why. That the why is your mission. The why is the vision that you have for your school and for your kids. And the why is the values that you're trying to express around, well, individualized learning or discovery or reading for the fun of it or reading across the curriculum or getting kids to read in the first place. There are plenty of people out there who think that public education right now and private education right now is a mess. They don't have an understanding because we tend to hide our teachers and our instructors and our school librarians behind an administrative shield. I want to figure out ways to help you, an administrative barrier even. I want to figure out ways to help you step around from behind that barrier or that shield, because there are folks out there who believe in libraries, they believe in school libraries, and they believe in school librarians. They are not going to use it, and they don't even have kids who are in it, but they are civic or social or funder deciders who need to hear more about it from you. And it's not just the particulars, it's not just the stats. It is, in fact, the heart of why you do this job. All right, one of our guiding principles around marketing and messaging for advocacy success on social and on email is that we do it all based on the audience, and the audience is highly differentiated. We do it based on the audience as opposed to the what that we're trying to share. And again, we're doing it based on not just consumables or users or transactions, the what of when, but it's on who else cares. Fundamentally, the audience differentiation that we're going to try and help you get to is to start thinking through the idea of who else cares. Who else cares about those kids? Who else cares about special populations? Who else cares about before and after school? Who else cares about making? Who else cares about reading across the curriculum? Who else cares about time outside of a test? Who else cares about a school place that prepares somebody for their career and not just for college? And who else cares about college readiness? And my goodness, there are dozens of audiences that we need to be working through in order to figure out who's going to listen to a particular message that we're going to send out. We tend to look inside school contexts as there being three audiences: parents, somehow or another the community, and then administrators. And it might not even be all administrators, it might just be your superintendent. We need to get a lot more granular with our anticipation of who's going to listen to our messaging in order for our Facebook, our social media, and our email to be received well. There's nothing that an audience cares less about than a message that is not targeted to them. And that is a truism and a true guiding principle. I care very much personally about 3 or 4 key issues around schools. My key issue is, well, I mean, if we're going to talk about pre-K readiness, if we're going to talk about reading at 3rd grade level, let me do reading at 3rd grade level. For me, that's a big issue personally. And the school safety one, I understand it abstractly. I understand it even kind of viscerally, but it's not the thing that's making me stay up at night. I mean, I know my community, And I'm more worried about third grade reading than I am about whether or not, well, I trust that the fire alarm works and I trust that they can do these drills better. If you're talking to me constantly with one message, and if you don't necessarily listen to me when I tell you what I want to hear from you about, I'm going to tune you out. But I'm going to delight when I hear from you about something that I've already told you that I appreciate and something that I already told you that I'm interested in. We're going to get into how to do that in just a second, though, to find out me and to find out other people like me. How do you find an audience? For good marketing to land on somebody's heart, in their head, or in their guts, you have to start with who they are and how they're going to listen about your mission, your values, and your vision. You probably already own that data in your school in one way, shape, or form. The clubs that your kids are involved in, the parents are part of that. They care because their kids are there. The groups that are in your school, the parents, they are already your first audience, and they need to be addressed based on what their kids like. Yes. And then you also have to be able to ask them directly, well, what else do you believe in? And the teams and such that are in your school context. Broader outside of your community, outside of your school community, your community at large, the city, town, village, county, townships, whatever you're serving, there are plenty of places to find audiences who care about the fact that there's a school librarian doing that kind of special work in the school, that there's a school librarian staffing the largest classroom. And those are based on the behaviors that people have as consumers. And those behaviors are discoverable in places like, well, A to Z databases and Reference USA. A lot of public libraries have that subscription. Even some school libraries do. Michigan e-library. There's a few out there. The resource that's in there that says, well, this thing about the Russians, this thing about Cambridge Analytica, this thing about, like, well, where did they get it? Where did they start? Well, on Facebook, they used a certain kind of trickery, if you will, to find out people's demographics. But the tools that are available in Facebook right now and in some other social media platforms, if you like a page and you have nothing to do with education and you have no kids in your school and you're paying taxes for that school, if you like a page about, there's a lot of different topics. Pick the one that you'd like to be able to talk to somebody at large about. It's in their Facebook data, and it's in their consumer data that's available in these A to Z databases and Reference USA. The other best way to build an audience, though, is to build it from, real life, real human contact and engagements. It is literally having the clipboard available, not just for kids. It's not even for the kids, forgive me. It's the clipboard available at special events, at the fairs, at the fests, at the family literacy nights. And it's also to have the clipboard available, literally the clipboard, your name, what do you care about? How do I get in touch with you? Clipboard available in other places around the community. The audience that I'm looking for you to contact, like I said before, is not just parents, it's other stakeholders. And those other stakeholders are folks who live in your area, who pay taxes, who want to hear about 21st century school librarianship. One of the guiding principles that we have is that you move people through the engagement through different types of contacts. The funnels of contacts. Email is one of them. And I want to get into differentiating email between newsletter and transactional content. Thursday, 7 p.m., family movie night, bring your kids, into emailing that talks about the vision, mission, and values that you're expressing for your school community, for education, and as a school librarian. Likewise, the touch points that you can have with folks through Facebook and on email, in personal context, because Facebook in a lot of ways is like personal contact. There's a simulacrum of it, especially you as a personality. We move people through funnels and we ask them to do something. That funnel is a pathway. Email is a pathway. Facebook's a pathway. Personal contact is a pathway. And it's not just us telling somebody, it's getting something back. I'm going to tell you exactly what that looks like in 1 second. And it's asking them to do something. Asking them to do something not just for those kids, but for the mission that they believe in and the values that you're expressing. If they share that value system, they would like to do something for you. The guiding principle that we have around marketing is always to collect contact information. What moves somebody from unaware to aware is advertising. What moves somebody from aware of what you're doing into supporting it is that you can keep in touch with them. You can ask them for help. You can encourage them to support in particular ways. You can tell them, and not just tell them, but you can activate them. If you don't have somebody's email address, if you don't have somebody's email address, if you don't have somebody's email address, you're only doing advertising. You're not doing effective marketing. One of our other guiding principles is that, well, you're the Dread Pirate Roberts. You know the idea of the Dread Pirate Roberts? He wasn't the original Dread Pirate Roberts. He is the, well, he was only the Dread Pirate Roberts for like 5 years. He'd only been marauding for 5 years. How did he become the Dread Pirate Roberts? Is that the original guy, well, he wanted to retire, the original guy. I think his name was Cumberpatch. He wanted to retire, and so he fired his crew, and he brought on a new crew, pretended to be the first mate, and called Wesley the Dread Pirate Roberts. He conferred the aura, the authority, the expertise of the Dread Pirate Roberts on Wesley, and the crew feared him, and he could continue to maraud. In a certain respect, you're the dreaded school librarian Karen. The dread school librarian Karen, if you have got ideas for the world, if you have got ideas for your kids, if you've got ideas for your school community, you don't have to have necessarily done them successfully in order for you to talk about how they could be done successfully. There's a lot of other examples out there, and most of what we do in these kinds of advocacy webinars and these ISTE webinars is talk about best practices. If somebody else has pulled this thing off before, and you need support for your big idea, be the Dread Pirate Karen or the Dread School Librarian Karen, and stand on that power, if you will, of the Dread Pirate. You can take somebody else's image. You can take somebody, not to falsely represent it, but to say, we'd like to do that too. There's also the idea in politics of expertise. That one of the things that you do, well, Rick Perry, when he was running for president, wore glasses. Prior to running for president, Rick Perry never wore glasses. He wore contacts. Very handsome man, don't get me wrong, but wearing the glasses would allow him to go up during a stump speech or when he was running for president or at a debate and take the glasses off with some savoir-faire and to talk about America and to talk about foreign policy and domestic policy. There is nobody else in your community who is an expert on 21st century school library work. There are people in your community with kids and without kids, kids who are aged out of your school, kids who don't go to your school, who go someplace else, people who are interested in 21st century library and 21st century librarianship. And they need to hear from you because you are the sole provider of that expertise. A core kernel of your messaging on social and on email is about what it means to be fully equipped, be properly funded, and to be appropriately staffed to do the work that is librarianship in the school community. And to stand on that, not just the Dread School Librarian Karen idea, that somebody else's ideas are good ideas too, and you want to move that thing forward. It's the fact that you are the boss on that. There's another principle in politics. Saul Alinsky. He wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. It is a well-thumbed guide to how to disrupt and how to change systems from within. And one of his key principles is that it's necessary to begin where the world is if we're going to change it to what we think it should be. It means working within the system. It means addressing people where they're at. And it means, in a certain respect, behaving in a way that allows them to think that you're part of the system while you're trying to make a big change in it. The marketing that you want to do is always trying to meet people where they are at rather than forcing them to accommodate your particular quirks and your particular proclivities. You can shine, you can be an individual. That's not what I'm suggesting that you do, that you try and diminish What I am suggesting is that you need to be a really good study of who those people are you're trying to market to. And not just to accommodate the channels, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or or email that they're on, but to try and accommodate to, well, if you're a particularly progressive person and you're in a very conservative community, I'm not asking you to change your stripes. You can't. And I'm not asking you to change their stripes. They won't. But I am asking you to pick the language that you use, and move it potentially from a particularly progressive idiom into one that might be more understandable and translatable for a more conservative community. You're not being false. You both care about the whole life of the child. You're not being disingenuous. You both care about these issues that you're trying to address for these kids. And you are still in loco parentis for them. Even though you're not a classroom instructor, perhaps, though many of you are on this webinar, I know that. You are still in loco parentis, so you have to put yourself in that parent's place, in that community member's place, which is fundamentally, they've been taught as consumers to be concerned. Ours is an idiom of hope. I'd like you to be able to push that forward with them as well. In the marketing that we're doing, not advertising, but in the marketing we're doing, we always want to have a sense of urgency in it. It's one of our guiding principles, whether it's on Facebook, and it is a take action now. If it's on email, it's a take action now. There are verbs, folks. There are verbs that instill a sense of urgency. And we are looking for people to give us their contact information and to take an action. It might be support. It might be refer. It might be forward. It might be share. It might be like. It might be donate. It might be volunteer. It might be validate. It might be stand with. It might be, well, there's a lot of words, and you have to be bold enough in your outbound marketing to do more than just attend. If it's just attend 7 p.m. on Thursday night for family literacy night, yeah, I mean, you kind of get part of the way there. But on Friday, when you talk about what was done for those kids, those families, those students, the whole life of the child, the entire campus community, there needs to be something that person who reads it, whose heart starts to burn a little bit, for them to be able to do. One of our guiding principles, of course, in library land is about privacy. I am not suggesting for a minute that in your marketing and your outreach and your messaging that you violate these privacy issues. Everything that I'm suggesting to you is an opt-in. And none of it is with students. Nothing that I'm talking about is with students. It's all with parents. It's all with adults. And it's all opting in. It's very important to remember that, because we have a real responsibility, a very sacred responsibility about confidentiality and privacy, as well as the responsibilities as a reporter. I'm not suggesting any of that changes for the kids. What I want you to be able to do is freely and brazenly ask people to opt in to hear more about what the library is doing, that library program is up to. And the librarians, your colleagues, if you're a solo librarian, if you got a whole bunch of folks working in departments all across your big district, I want them to opt into that. All right, let me take 2 seconds and pause and remind you that we're doing questions tonight on the Twitter feed, or on the Twitter hashtag #ISTELib. It's also one of the best places in internet land to convene conversations around current and future school library practices and educational technology. The ISTE Librarians Network. I will give 10 or 15 commercials for them every day of the week. They're fantastic. But tonight, if you want to talk to us, it's best to use hashtag #ISTELib. All right, let me get into the messaging and then get into techniques, and we'll bring this thing home. Messaging works by moving what you're trying to accomplish through a series of issues that community members are listening to and the parents are listening to. There's a lot of noise out there, and your best approach in Facebook and on social, on email, is to anticipate on an audience by audience basis, to the best of your ability, because what you're going to have to do is keep testing this, to the best of your ability, what they are trying to listen for. And you know as well as I that there are many different audiences within a very small school or a very large school or a really big district. Some of those audience issues are about their own kids. Some of it's about those other kids. Some of it's about some kid that's not even mine. And they are willing to listen if you can differentiate your messaging. In messaging and in marketing, I should say, there's the idea of a theme and there's the idea of a message. I'm not able to spend time with you right now developing an individual theme for your school library program and for your outbound marketing, whether it's on social or on email. What we can do is differentiate for you tonight the difference between, Obama's up there, President Obama. He was great at it. There was hope and change, hope and change, hope and change. The theme for his campaign was always about hope and always about change. In the message, folks, the message was relevant to the audience that he was addressing. On the lower left-hand side, it was agriculture in Iowa. On the upper right-hand side, it was automotive in Detroit. And I'm not being flip about it. If he started talking about one to the other, people would stop listening to him, except out of courtesy. If our messaging is always about, just one or two things, and we don't differentiate it based on the populations we're talking about, the value system they have, and the audiences that the populations that they care about, we're not going to be able to succeed. It's all theory tonight, folks. It's all theory, because I can't get into the particulars of your school situation, but you've got some, whether you're a future-ready library, if you are a baccalaureate program, if you're an honors, if you're a college-ready, if you're career-ready, if you're just making it happen, those themes are already resident in your educational landscape, and the messaging has to be relevant to the people that you're talking to. When you message, the 5 C's. The one I'm going to skip over is the 4th one, because I can't be concise myself. I talk for entire webinars. But the messaging needs to be contrasting around, what happens if somebody takes an action? What happens if they don't? What happens if there is a continuation of a program? What happens if it doesn't continue? What happens if the children have access, the students have access? What happens if they don't? Contrasting messaging is a fundamentally important way on Facebook, in email, to make your message heard. Convincing is good writing. Convincing is using strident language. Consistent is that once you get your theme established and your audiences segmented so that you can start driving a message home, you don't change it. You don't change it mid-semester. You don't change it mid-year. It might not even change for 2 or 3 or 4 years. Because consistency is the thing that helps move people at the most basic from that unaware to aware. It is the heart of advertising, but consistent messaging also includes a call to action. Concise, it's short. That's all I'm going to say about that. And clear, again, focuses on the call to action. What do you want somebody to do once they've found out this new information and that their hearts are burning within them? Their minds are engaged, and in their gut, they know you're right. All right, let's get into techniques. Techniques are fun. Techniques are interesting, and techniques are not the point. The whole point is to move somebody from that unaware to aware, from observer into supporter. The channels are how you can express it, and I got some good pro tips for you here and some good insights, I hope, that'll help move you forward. That said, I'm available. My colleagues at every library are available to help you think through some more of this messaging, to think through some more of this high-level marketing work, because it isn't easy as a solo librarian, as a department head, as a librarian who's bouncing around a whole bunch of different buildings. I get it. And the access that you might feel, John, you're crazy, you're saying to yourself, I don't have access to the public. My administrators do. Okay, cool. Let's talk about how we shape content within that space for them to use as a unit. John, I don't have access beyond my kids. Well, great. Then how do we help your kids with their projects? Talk about the vision, values, and mission that you have as in that school library context. Okay, let me get into the techniques here though on Facebook in particular. And this is how we can work on getting your particular message out. Facebook. If you're doing anything for your school, or if you're involved in a professional organization or association or an issue advocacy group, these tips hopefully will help you move it from simply posting about Thursday night family reading time, family literacy time, into a discussion about why you're doing it, and then a recap of why you did it. The ads on Facebook that are available to you for a school and for a issue advocacy or for a professional organization, the standard ads start, of course, with the boosted post. I would hope right now that there are there are boosts happening in order to be able to do one really big thing, and that is to push your message out into a group of folks who are otherwise unaware, who are community members. Some of them might be parents, but most of them are not necessarily associated with your school. To do a boosted ad, to do a boosted post, is to do your first step on differentiating your audience. Once you hit that boost post option, it gives you a chance to differentiate by geography. So you can do it within a zip code or the name of a city. You can do it in a zone around a town or a township or a county. You can do it in a way that looks at ages very easily. And you can look at other demographic points as well as what people have said they believe. That's a fascinating opportunity. You can hit alumni with it based on their identification with the school and the sports teams. You can hit people who have moved away from your community by people who like your community or your school, who are no longer in your close by geography. The resources that are available from this simple boost post, and when we talk about boosting posts in communities, we're talking about $3, $4, $5 a day. Likewise, if you're in an issue advocacy organization or professional association, to be able to do this work is to be able to get beyond the simple small group that you have. And to put a little bit of money into it does return a great deal of results. If you have the chance to spend money using Facebook, and there's really no reason to use Facebook unless you're able to spend money, because of two things. One is that the kids these days, they don't like pages. The kids these days don't like pages anymore because they're more sophisticated than people in my demographic and older. We like pages still because we came of age much later in the Facebook cycle. And for us to see it and for them to see it is to have it placed in front of us with an ad. It's unfortunate. It's not organic. Organic is dead. There is nothing that's viral. Everything is fueled by an ad. And if you have an ad manager, and if you want to be the Facebook expert for your school or for your district, this is how you do it. The business manager side of Facebook is extraordinary. You can look under the hood on this and find out amazing audience insights and plan. Basically, folks, there's a marketing manager available from Facebook now that you can get for free from Facebook by phone in order to take you through this, but you have to have the business manager's module set up. If your PIO office or your outreach office doesn't have it, you could be the hero of the day. And then you can insinuate yourself into helping to create content that goes out through those. But the marketing manager at Facebook, they care because you're paying them. The ad network is very interesting in Facebook as well, and it's native to the ad space on Facebook. The ad network allows you to advertise across many different websites and many different mobile apps beyond the Facebook module itself. It's embedded in there, and it gives you an extraordinary reach for, yes, events, but yes, for the value system that you're trying to express about 21st century learning through your school library program. Again, if you have the business manager set up for Facebook, you can look into the audience insights section to find out who likes your stuff and who is participating as a consumer of your advertising. It is important to find that out, because if you're accidentally targeting a different demographic than you were expecting to by age, let's say, if your grandparent group is more into what you're doing than the parents themselves, great. Then you know two things. One is how to reach grandparents. Congratulations. And what you have to keep working on in order to reach parents or people who don't have kids themselves. The audiences that are available in Facebook are vast. And I mentioned before about the Russians and about Cambridge Analytica. If you have as small of an audience of people that you want to reach, as small as 1,000 people, you can bring it into Facebook as a custom audience. All you need is their name, their address, and their phone number. And Facebook will match them up. So if you have an alumni group and you're looking to do development, if you have a group of folks who are supporters of your career readiness, but in addition to your college readiness, you can bring them in as a special audience and do targeted advertising to them through the Facebook Business Manager engine. It's amazing what you can get done with as few as 1,000 people. This pixel thing, give me a call. It's fascinating. You can put a pixel on your school's public-facing web pages. I wouldn't do it on anything behind a password, but on a public-facing web page, and then track who visits it based on their advertising engagements with you. Likewise, they've just released on Facebook a new creative hub, which allows you to do some much more innovative and interesting posts. This is the one place I would suggest that you want to bring your students in on, because the creative types in that room are going to be able to help you move the quality of your advertising forward, yes, but also the quality of your marketing and engagements forward. This is the ultimate way to do it on Facebook, where if we're asking for emails, a lead ad is basically a situation where a story comes up or an advertisement comes up or an engageable post comes up, and it says, if you'd like more information, if you want to be part of this, if you want to take an action right now, you can. And you hit the button and it populates your own information into this form and it sends it in to whoever is issuing the ads. If that's you, it's a way to engage volunteers, donors, supporters, folks who care, and to be able to have them subscribe to a relevant email, a relevant newsletter through that Facebook engagement. It's a really powerful tool. Okay, let me touch Instagram for just a moment. Again, we're looking not at kids, we're looking not at students, but at parents and adults without children in the community. Unless you have some compelling reason to think that parents and adults without children in your community are following Instagram, then just use whatever's available on Facebook to push your messaging into Instagram. Don't do new content there. Yes, your kids can be very creative. You can have an Instagram takeover day for the school. You can have an Instagram takeover month for the library. That's not what I'm talking about. That's programming. Likewise, unless you're in a very big geography with a very large opportunity for people to follow hashtags and to aggregate as either current supporters or alumni, I wouldn't do very much on Twitter either. And the engine that they have for differentiating audiences is not that awesome. You can spend a lot more time on Facebook doing that, and within those data sets, in order to succeed, Twitter is a rough spot too, because it tends to be a dumpster fire, and I hate to send people into dumpster fires. All right, we're coming around the horn. Last couple of points coming up. I want to remind you that we're taking questions on ISTE-Lib, and we'll be answering questions not here on the webinar, but by tweets. Okay. Coming around the horn though, and happy to be part of it with you. All right. Everything comes down to email when it comes to utilizing the social and email opportunities for support, for maximum effect. Email is the key to the internet is not a pithy maxim. You have the interoperability and the endurance of keeping in touch with somebody through email. I cannot talk to somebody on Twitter from Facebook. I can post from Facebook to Instagram because they are owned by the same company, but I can easily talk to somebody on a Gmail from my @edu account or my my school account. The interoperability of it is very important to remember, and the endurance of it, because as different social platforms come and go, email is the thing that establishes your account and is in existence after your social media account closes. All right? And the email list is the key driver for all support building. The email list is the key driver for moving people from that observer status into the supporter status and from that supporter to advocate status. Without the email address, it is a like in the void. With the email address, you can move the world. The difference between email and Facebook is fundamentally that email takes time, Facebook takes money. Email takes time, but Facebook takes money. And if you don't have access to the social media keys, email is probably your best, safest, and most available route to talk to people who also care about the same kids you care about. In your marketing and outreach, whether it's a clipboard, whether it's a response on a survey, whether it is a parent engagement moment, whether it is a business card that you're getting at a networking event, always ask for their email. When you're writing for email, go back to those 5 C's. Concise, contrasting, consistent. The idea of writing for email, the shorter, the better, is not always true. You have a lot to talk about, but it should be one topic at a time. It could be a longer story about that one topic. Don't make it a million topics at once. And I'm being really serious about this. It might be a 1 paragraph about the topic. It might be 3 paragraphs. It might be 5 paragraphs. It might be 7 paragraphs about that topic. But as long as the topic is relevant to the audience that you're addressing and is in that consistent and in that contrasting sort of way between what happens if they do and what happens if they don't take that action, you'll be much more successful. Email needs to be segmented. There's no such thing as a reply all. There's no such thing as a send it to all. Parents are not the audience. What do those parents believe? That belief system, that hope that they have in those particular populations that they're concerned about is the segmentation. It's not just parents and not parents. And not parents is not the audience either. The segmentation is, what do they hope for career readiness? What about college? What about special populations? What about populations of concern? What about the work that is being done on creativity and discovery and making? And I'm not recommending for even 1 second that you start dumping newsletters. It's a little more work. It's a little more work than just typing in order to do differentiated emails. But our hope and our encouragement is for you to do some segmented emails, 1 to 3 emails based on what people care about. And it's not every kid. It's those particular kids that they care about. A couple of pro tips for you as we come into the last 2 or 3 minutes here. Please, when you're working on your Facebooks and when you're working on your Twitters and when you're working on your emails, moving beyond simply the transactional and news, Thursday night, 7 p.m., family literacy night, bring your kids. We have a lot of transactional messaging that goes out. If yours can be differentiated about what you're trying to accomplish, who you're trying to touch, and how you need help doing it, that's that call to action. Also, when you're focusing on your messaging, please look to the family and not just to the individual kids. I'm sure you already do this in a lot of your programming and in a lot of your LibGuides. One other piece of information for you, and this might be hard to hear, but I want you to think it through, is that career messaging is just as important as college readiness messaging to a large segment of our populations. And the political climate in this country is moving into career readiness in a way that your programs, your school libraries can help address. And if you've got, which I know you do, because I've looked at a lot of your websites, a lot of LibGuides, please think about them as being a place that you can start pushing immediately. The LibGuide is very powerful when it's pushed. I mean, whether you're using Follow Its Destiny or if you're using if you don't have a LibGuide environment and you're using like Goodreads or the Think one, put it together and send it out, not just to the kids, but to the parents. And not just to the parents, but to other people in your community who care about like health and safety, who care about civics and social studies, who care about the idea that their kids are reading something in the canon and doing independent study too. Your external audiences and your internal audiences are part of your audience segmentation. And your administration is certainly one of those internal audiences. Other teachers are, and your board. I don't have parents on here because the internal audiences are the ones who need to hear about your value within the community of practice. And the external audiences are not just the current funders, but they're the potential funders. And that doesn't begin and end with alumni. Only make the one ask. And your ability to do that starts and ends with the fact that you know the audience that you're talking to. All right, there's a million things more to talk about. We're available to help. We want to help you move this messaging conversation forward towards advocacy success, past support, and into true advocacy success. We're very happy to work with you on this. Things you can do to help make that happen. Like us on Facebook so you can keep an eye on what we're doing and learn from us a little bit. We're pretty good at it. We've got close to 300,000 people, Americans around the country, who care about libraries, who've self-identified and taken that action. Likewise, on action.everylibrary.org, you can be a part of it. We have our Vote Libraries initiative going on right now. This webinar is being taped on the 23rd of October in advance of the November 6th, 2018 elections. VoteLibraries.org is being used as a way to bring Americans together to take the pledge to support libraries, school libraries, public libraries, and to support elected officials from school boards all the way up to members of Congress who care about the future funding for libraries as well. And if anything breaks between now and then, please let us know via our SaveSchoolLibrarians.org site. We're available to be able to turn around an action if you're having a budgetary challenge or there's a big push against your positions in your school district. Let us know. We can turn around a campaign in 24 to 48 hours. Follett has been a great sponsor. ISTE School Librarians Network has been a great co-host tonight. I'm looking forward to catching up, Nancy Jo, with everybody on the ISTE Lib hashtag tonight. What else is going on? Are we cool?
Yeah, we had a few tweets on the hashtag for sure.
Oh, groovy. Anything that we should address before we sign off then?
No questions. Just people following along, commenting, providing their feedback.
Groovy.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts from you tonight?
I don't think so.
Great. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my magical phone and I'm going to get on the hashtag, and hopefully some folks have benefited from tonight. I'm looking forward to hearing from people as this thing kind of settles into their brains. All right.
Yeah, another big thank you to John and Every Library for doing this addition to the webinar series tonight, and Follett Learning for sponsoring tonight's webinar. Again, big shout out to Follett Learning, and we hope that everybody got some great information.
Thank you, Nancy Jo. I really appreciate it. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.